Welcome back, everyone. Middays with Gerard Gibbard coming at you live from Mississippi Blood Services. Please come out and donate, folks. The situation is critical, and so shocked to learn that Mississippi Blood Services needs to see as many as 200 donors every day to meet the present hospital need, and falling well short of that. So please come out. Do your part if you can. It's quick, it's easy, it's painless, 9 to 5. They're here waiting for you, and it's they're such good people. They're just really nice. But joining us now on the program, Mr. Jim Bohannon. He is the host of the Jim Bohannon Show. So, Jim, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Gerard, good to be with you guys.
Yes, sir. So lots of stuff going on. Did you catch any of the hearings yesterday up there on Capitol Hill?
Unbelievable. Yes, I discovered that apparently everything is Donald Trump's fault. I believe the hurricane, Ida, was Donald Trump's fault. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that if your jelly sandwich fell on the floor jelly down, that was Donald Trump's fault. Yes, I was quite amazed. I didn't think that he had much of a case to make, but I thought I could have done a better job of making the case than frankly, Blinken did. I was waiting, I guess, for his colleagues, Winken and Nod, to join in.
Well, what about the Secretary of State not being present on the Hill? Why did he join? Why do you think he joined virtually? Did that not seem almost as if he just dismissed the entire affair as unimportant?
I think that's the way it came across, and I find it hard to believe that they thought that was a good idea. Maybe it had something to do with I don't know, pandemic fears or whatever, but it was a lame move. But lame moves, I mean, this administration's idea of clearing a minefield is to strap on snowshoes and a blindfold and stomp forward. I mean, they not only have they done bad things, but they've done them in a terribly stupid way. It's as if they were thinking up ways that they could lose the midterms next year.
Do you think this is going to be lingering around when folks go in to cast their ballot, or as it is today, they stick it in the mail? This has got to play a major role in factoring into the elections, the midterm elections. I've always thought, Jim, you got sort of 40%, they're just entrenched with the party no matter what in both parties, and the 20% in the middle really tends to be the factor in determining the outcomes. It's those 20% in the middle. How do they unsee what we saw in Afghanistan?
Well, they can't, and of course there are so many things, too, that will be a factor here. I mean, first of all, since World War II, when a new president takes office, they have lost, on average, 27 seats in their first midterms. Well, the Democrats, of course, didn't have that many seats to lose in the first place. They had 5. So an ordinary administration would lose, and the speakership, Nancy Pelosi as Speaker, would end in January of 2023. That's if they had done a credible job. They have done a terrible job that 27-seat loss is probably going to be more like 35 or 40. So they're going to lose the House, major league, and that means the entire Biden domestic agenda screeches to a halt. They'll probably lose the Senate as well, which I think was a toss-up before. They're 50-50. 34 Senate seats are up, 20 Republican, 14 Democrats, and of the 20 Republicans, 5 are incumbent Republicans who are retiring. But that advantage for the Democrats of the Republicans losing incumbency is out the window. So it's very likely that come January of 2023, there will be a solidly Republican House and a solidly Republican Senate. So that means that Biden will be reduced to what he can get out of the courts, and of course that Supreme Court is not tilted in his direction, or out of his own executive orders. And he's pretty much run out of things that even he can try to do with executive orders. So, I think it's going to be a major factor. I mean, it's not just Afghanistan, for Pete's sake. I mean, crime in our major cities, the southern border, just from start to finish, they are just looking at ways to mess up.
The concern I have, Jim, is that they are just working feverishly, overtime, overdrive, to ram through this $3.5 trillion bill. Of course, they've modified that somewhat. This is the budget bill. They've modified that somewhat, and they released their big tax plans over the last couple of days. Sunday night, some of that leaked, and then more yesterday. Do you think they can ram that thing through?
No, not as it is. I think Senators Manchin of West Virginia and Sinema of Arizona, Democrats to be sure, but I mean they also are aware of the fact that this is nonsense. I'm sure some of their Democratic colleagues are as well, but they've been cowed by Chuck Schumer to go along. No, some smaller version may make it through. I mean, there are some infrastructure needs out there, but by that I mean infrastructure. People with questions can look up the word, things like roads and bridges and that sort of thing. But, of course, this thing is tossed in everything but the kitchen sink. And, no, I think that the vast majority of it doesn't really have a chance in terms of paying for it. Of course, President Biden has made a big deal out of the fact that we will not raise taxes on any American who makes less than $400,000 a year. Well, that may be what you say on paper. But what's really going to happen is you're going to raise a bunch of taxes on business. And what does business do when its expenses go up? Why, they pass it along to the consumer. So, no, Americans in the middle class and the like, you're not going to be paying necessarily taxes on your tax bill. You'll be paying higher prices every time you buy something. You'll be paying off the taxes that they're running up against the business in this country. And, of course, anything that doesn't fit that way, we'll just use the gross national credit card and jack that national debt up past 28-plus trillion to 35 trillion.
Yeah, and that's something. The Wall Street Journal, the editorial board, had a great article that basically, it was entitled, "Here Comes the Biden Tax Bill." And the point of the article and the message in the article was that these taxes, even though not directly imposed on those who earn less than $400,000, indirectly they are, with higher corporate taxes and also reducing the deduction for pass-through organizations, pass-through entities. You know that's going to have an impact as well on consumers.
Well, you just have to keep in mind who's doing all of this. These are people who have never created wealth a day in their life. They have no idea what Gerard Gibbert did to become an entrepreneur and a capitalist. They seem to think that there's actually a money tree growing behind the Treasury Department, and you can go out and you can pluck $100 bills off when you need some more. Seriously, we're talking about economic illiterates here. It is not just that they want to fly in the face of reality. They don't realize the reality. Nobody ever taught them anything about the basics of a free market economy. They would have flunked out after the first week of Econ 101. These were just not very smart people.
Yeah, it's just incredible. And, of course, increasing taxes on capital gains, and they always point to, well, that's only going to affect those people that have capital gains over a certain threshold, but no consideration, Jim, to how that impacts investment and expansion and risk-taking, which are the keys to growing the economy. There's never any consideration to how do we grow opportunity, how do we grow the economy and produce more wealth. It's all about how do we redivide and redistribute the pie.
Exactly, and they have no idea how to bake a pie in the first place. They are people in the kitchen, and they have a knife, and they see a pie, and they'll try to cut the slices. They don't have the first clue about how you bake a pie or how to bake an extra pie. They just don't understand. I mean, it is tragic, but, I mean, I didn't help elect them.
Yeah. Well, speaking of executive orders, last week the president goes live. He never does it prime time, by the way, but he goes live and announces 2 executive orders that would mandate vaccinations, first for all those that work in the executive branch of the federal government and contractors that vend to them, and then what I believe is just an excessive overreach of power, imposing the requirement to either vaccinate or test on employers with greater than 100 employees.
Well, they don't have the authority to do that.
I don't think so either, but was that the most divisive speech you've ever seen a president deliver?
Well, of course. I mean, remember his promise he was going to be the unifier, the healer, and, of course, from his inaugural address on, he has not done that. The courts may well rule that the federal government has some authority here, but they will rule that it cannot be done by executive order using the Labor Department or any other department. It has to be done by a law passed by Congress and signed by the president, and that simply has not happened. So this is going to lose in the courts. And, you know, it's interesting who among the very first people to note how this was questionable constitutionally, one of the very first people to note that several weeks ago was a guy named Joe Biden. And he admitted as much. This may not be constitutional. Well, congratulations. I'm not sure who was writing your cue cards back then, Joe, but they should still be writing them because you were right then and you're wrong now.
Yeah. Well, it remains to be seen. I think, Jim, we're likely to see lawsuits that result in injunctions here pretty quick with respect to the private sector order that's supposed to be promulgated as rules through OSHA.
Yeah, and I think we are already told that the Supreme Court may be, within the month, may be issuing a preliminary ruling, and I don't think this Supreme Court is going to go along with this overreach of federal power. So I think that you'll see a major judicial interruption of all of this within the next few weeks.
Jim, pleasure having you on the show today, sir. Really appreciate you joining us and look forward to talking to you again.
But anytime, happy to do it, Gerard, and I'm proud to be a part of SuperTalk Mississippi.